Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's ONTRACK Plus live learning session. My name is Lucy Lopez, and I'll be your host for this conversation about careers in military service and how those experiences can shape your future opportunities. The content shared during this session represents one professional's journey and perspective. While the insights are invaluable, we encourage you to explore additional resources and paths to determine what aligns best with your goals. Today, we're honored to have a very special guest, SgtMaj Marty Kenny. He's here to share his incredible journey in the United States Marine Corps, the challenges and rewards of military service, and how he's using his experiences to serve others today. So let's dive in. Marty Kenny is a retired United States Marine Corps Sergeant Major with an impressive 28-year career, including 4 combat tours in the Far and Middle East. After retiring, he continued his mission of service by founding The Weekly Fight, an organization dedicated to supporting veterans, first responders, and their families to combat PTSD. SgtMaj Kenny's story is one of leadership, resilience, and a profound commitment to community. Today, he'll share his insights into his decision to join the Marine Corps, the lessons he learned during his service, and how those lessons continue to guide his life and work. On a more personal note, Marty has been a mentor with the Uncommon Individual Foundation, the organization that supports and powers ONTRACK Plus. He joined UIF's incubator nearly 8 years ago when he was first starting The Weekly Fight, and he is one of the nicest people to work with. Our student mentees who worked with him were very happy with all his guidance and mentorship, and we are really happy to have you here today, Marty. So the floor is yours, and the students really want to hear about your journey.
Thank you very much, Lucy. It's great to be here. So first and foremost, I guess I want to talk a little bit about myself. I grew up, I was born in 1962, so grew up a little while ago. But I grew up during the Vietnam War, which had a strong impact on my life. I grew up watching a war on TV, which, prior to that never really happened. And my dad grew up was served in during World War II in the Navy. I had a cousin who went into the Marine Corps, ended up going into the Marines and served in Vietnam. I think either way, I knew I was going to go into the military, but I think my cousin Frank going into the Marine Corps kind of set me on that path. Unfortunately, he did a tour, came back, and then he left to go back to Vietnam and never came back. So growing up during that time, I also learned and started to realize that, we had a shifting opinion in the population, and it was the first time that our veterans really suffered from the decision of political people. And I saw a lot of this, and I saw a lot of, I guess, the abuse, or not so much of the abuse, but the disservice that our veterans were getting as Vietnam veterans. So I wanted to do something for veterans, and I knew I was going to go into the career as a Marine Corps, in the Marine Corps. When I went in the 80s. It was definitely I guess it was a unique time because we were in between wars, and it was also a time where the political landscape was very anti-war, anti-military, but I still wanted to go in. I went in as a combat engineer. What a combat engineer does in the Marine Corps, we learn how to build things so we can blow them up, is the best way I could tell you that. We do vertical construction, housing. We will go into an area and create a forward operating base so that we can basically be a forward position for the wars moving forward. I started doing that, and as a career for a 4-year span, I didn't really know which way I was going to go. So when I went in as a 4-year commitment, and then I did 4 years reserve. I ended up staying in the reserve, and then when 9/11 happened, I ended up getting mobilized quite a bit during that 10 to 12-year span of the height of global war on terrorism. I stayed in the Marine Corps, you can go, there's a couple of different paths which we'll go in, but I stayed in as an enlistant and went into the first sergeant major area, which is more of the administrative field. The other area you could go into on the enlisted side is a master sergeant or a master gunnery sergeant, which is more of a military occupational specialist. So my thought process was I wanted to be able to take care of Marines as a whole, and I just thought that was the best way for me to do it. I ended up serving 28 years. I ended up getting out, and at that time I decided that I wanted to continue my service and help people, and I started a foundation called The Weekly Fight. So that's a little Reader's Digest version of 28 years. So, but I do want to talk about what's most important for everybody here is why you want to join the military and why a career in the military might be for you. And I think the first thing is why. There's a lot of different reasons. A big one is definitely college and money. It is absolutely a way to get the funds you need to pay for college. I can't stress how much that is a big factor, but it also comes with a caveat because you are also still in the military. So the why is very important. Do you want money for college? Do you want skills? Do you want discipline? Are you looking for leadership? I don't suggest and I don't think the military is really a place for you to kind of find where you want to go. I think that it's more of a case of knowing that you want to go into military is an advantage. If you want to figure out if you want to go into the military, you probably should do some more research before making that commitment. And fortunately now, you can Google anything and find out life in military. You're going to find factual stuff and unfactual stuff, but at least it'll give you some information to make an educated decision. Because, if you go into the military versus going just to college, you go into the military now, you've just signed a commitment to the military. So if you get in trouble in the military and you get out, it's going to have some consequences. You go to college, you get drunk, you get in trouble, it's not that much. So, please make sure you have a pretty good firm thought process on whether you want to make this commitment, because it is a commitment. The other piece I would say on why you want to join is what's the long-term goal? I know a lot of people that had started out in the military, wanted to do a career in the military, because you can do a career in the military, get 20 years in, retire, and really start another career. I know a lot of people who went into the military, did a 20-year career in the military, left, go into law enforcement, do a 20-year career in law enforcement, and end up collecting 2 pensions after a 40-year career. So there's definitely some advantages to knowing what you want to do ahead of time. So once you decide that you do want to go in the military, now you've got to kind of come down to weighing out what do you want to do. Is it full-time? Is it part-time? What branch you want to go into? Now, on the slide that's here has got all the major branches, but there's also another branch in there called the Space Force, which is fairly new. And I can tell you that I know one person in Space Force. He was in the Army, got selected to go in, and he tells me very little about it. So I can't give you a lot of information, but it is very much a highly technical field. If you're looking to do anything from a standpoint of innovative ideas and future development, Space Force is the way to go. It is very competitive to get into there. I don't know what the recruitment level going outside of it is. I know that they're pulling from branches as ahead of time. But besides that, you obviously have Air Force, Army, Coast Guard, Marine Corps, and Navy. And I think that understanding what you want to do as a permanent job career can also help you decide what branch to go into. They all kind of have their specialty, but each of those branches also has special units that do pretty much every job intertwined between the different branches. If you go full-time, which means that you go into the military and you're there, it's 9 to 5, you're working all the time. It's depending on the job that you do, it could be a 9 to 5 job. If you are certain occupations, you are 24/7. If you're military police, if you're infantry, if you're any type of special operations, you're 24/7. You can get a phone call and have to be gone. It's just like a normal job outside of the fact that you could end up deployed into a combat environment. And the thing that is an advantage to full-time is if you have a particular field where you're doing a normal job where it's Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and there's plenty of them out there in the military like that, you could also go to school while you're doing your full-time work. So that's one advantage on the full-time side. Part-time, a lot of people go part-time because they use this piece. This is a way to get college money to serve while you're going to college and kind of take that commitment of that, usually a 4 to 8 year commitment, and chop it down a little bit. Because if you're going to school for 4 years, basically it's called a 4x8 or a 4x4 program. You do 4 years active, 4 years inactive. You're able to basically pay for your college, serve an additional 4 years, and you're done. And you have your college paid for. So a lot of people do that to help them just pay for college.
I'm going to jump in here for a second,
Absolutely.
Marty. When you say college, you're referring to military college, correct?
No, I'm talking.
No.
Right, initially, for this piece, it's just college as a whole. If you want to just go to the reserves, you can go in as an enlisted, not have a college diploma, and it will pay for your college. You can. It's the GI Bill. It's called post 9/11 GI Bill, is I believe what they call it now. And what it does is it gives you money for college, books, housing, everything. You can pretty much pay for your college as a whole.
But there is the military college option as well.
So there's
multiple
if your career
pathways.
path is you want to go in the military, make a 20-year commitment or 30-year commitment out of the military, and you want to go to a specific military college, and the two big ones are Annapolis, which is for the Navy Marine Corps, and West Point for the Army. There's a lot of other military schools out there, but they're not as known, and they basically, you get done with them and you take a commission in the military, whichever branch you choose. And at that point, you're it. That's it. Your career is solid. You have to resign your commission as an officer to get out. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. I think for when you're making this decision first, I think the first thing is obviously figure out where you want to go, what you want to do, what is the job you'd like to do? And it really is, you could do anything in the military. This is just a real quick segment of what's out there as far as jobs. Obviously, infantry is your people on the ground, diver, bridge member, fire support, tank operator, physical therapist specialist. So any number of fields, you could get the education, training that you need from the military if you just want to use the military as a stepping stone, which a lot of people do, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think that when you're making this decision, you really got to figure out what you want to do in your long term. If it is a long-term path of a career in the military, then find something that you enjoy to do. Because there obviously is a ton of stuff out there that you can do as a career path. I think that it's very important to look at not only what you like to do, but what you're good at too. One of the things, if you do decide to go in a full-time career versus a reserve career, chances of you staying in the same place for any length of time are slim to none. Usually it's anywhere from a 2 to 4 year commitment at one duty station. And depending on the branch that you go to, you could get transferred anywhere across the world. Now, anytime that you are in, you always have a choice of 3 duty stations, depending on the job that you choose. It's a crapshoot whether you get it or not. So, again, when you're deciding to make this as a career path, the little things about where you live kind of become a misnomer because you don't make that decision a lot of times. You go where they tell you to go. You will end up, you're doing what they want you to do. You're part of a very big organization, and it takes a lot of little pieces to move it. So I if you're going to make this a career decision, then find something that you enjoy doing. Because you were definitely, unlike a career with a lot of companies, you're not going to stay in that same building, that same place for 20 years. And I personally think that it makes you more of a well-rounded person, because now you're not only getting to the experience from one duty station, now you're going to work with other people in other areas. So you get so much experience from the military, more so than I think any other field, because of that one particular piece of the military life where you do go to other areas. And I know I covered a kind of a very broad span here, but I think that it really comes down to you making a decision on what job, what career path you want to take. The officer, there's two lines of paths with the military. There's an officer path, which is more of the managerial decision-making processes, and what's called the enlisted. As you start off as an enlisted, that's your private through sergeant and moving on up. You do get a lot of responsibilities. You have people reporting to you and everything else. You're just not the person that's making the final decision, so to speak, on the ground. There's somebody that's always going to have the final say if you're an enlisted. And even as an officer, there's somebody else that's going to have the final say above you, unless you're the president of the United States. It is absolutely, I think, one of the most rewarding careers you can have, because you get impacted by so many people because of, number one, the size of the organization, and then number two, the amount of travel that you have to do. And I think that alone is enough reason for me to want to do it, because I think that I have met so many amazing people because of my military career that I would not have met otherwise. And that's, to me, that's what it's all about. What kind of questions you got for me, Lacey?
I got questions for you, but I want to open it up to our students to see what kind of questions you have. Feel free to put your questions in the public chat, and I'll be able to get to them one by one. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for students to ask questions, I'm going to start you off with, I guess, what advice would you give to students weighing their options? Whether they should enlist or go to college or go to military college. You said there's different ways to go about it.
I think a lot of it, if you're going to go enlisted, in making a decision for enlisted and officers, it really comes down to the level of responsibility that you want to have. If you like to be in control of things, if you like to have your hands in everything and be the person that's the leader and the guiding force, then you want to go into the officer corps, because those are the people that make the decisions.
And so what happens once you decide to enlist? What is the next
step?
So
once you decide that you're going to enlist and you're going to go into the officer corps, there's a couple of things that can happen. First, you have to have a college degree. So you have to go to college. So you can go to a military college, or you can go to any other college. If you go to a military college, you're already working on getting your military career started when you do that. If you just go to college and then go into military, you're not utilizing that college education to help your military career. But getting into a military college is not easy, especially if you're talking West Point, Annapolis. Those are made by appointment only. If you don't know a senator or have a senator that's a friend to you, then you're going to have a tough time getting in. But there are, Virginia Tech, there's a lot of other military colleges out there that don't have the same restraints.
Okay. And now, do you need a certain GPA to enlist? This is a question from our students.
Yes, you do. For the officer side, you've got to go through the testing. You have to go through college to become an officer. On the enlisted side, you have to take what's called an ASVAB test. So it's not like a GPA or anything else like that. So you just take a test, and basically, depending on how you score on that test, will determine what occupational fields you can go into. Obviously, the higher you score, the more careers you can open up for yourself.
Okay, and a follow-up question from one of our students. What's the average on the ASVAB?
Ooh, I honestly can't answer that because it's been so long since
you
I've
did it
taken
a very long time ago.
It's been a few years since I've done it or had any involvement in it.
But I mean, I'm assuming that information is readily available online.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So we can actually check that information for you if you can't find it, and we can send you an email or post it on our platform to let you know what that will be. Moving forward with some other questions, I think they're asking about grades, but I'm thinking that the grades and the senator connections are most important if you want to go to military college like West Point, right?
Yes, absolutely. So your grades is going to help you get into the college. Yes, I think when it comes to a military college, a specific military university, unfortunately, it's not. It's more connection based a lot of times. It is what it is. However, if you are a good student, if you know how to write, if you can write your senator a letter and just say, hey, this is who I am, I'm looking for someone to support me, you never know what happens. There's a lot of senators out there that would definitely support people that have a good, correct track record.
Is there anything your high school can do to help you prepare for a military career, for example?
So, I mean, just like the SATs, I mean, there's courses to take, the ASVAB test. There's definitely some different things. I can't speak to that because I just don't know how the school systems work now. I know that a lot of Counselors, back when I was recruiting 10, 15, 20 years ago, that they were definitely involved with the military, and they could contact you to recruiters. So I know that that's something with Counselors that they might be able to do.
Can you talk about some of the unexpected challenges and rewards of serving?
I think one of the biggest challenges for myself, and I think a lot of people, is understanding that they have your best interest in mind. Because especially as you first go in, you literally know nothing. You're not going to be given any information, and you're going to be questioning everything. And I think that...
usually we tell kids to question everything.
Correct. And
so it's counterintuitive.
It's very counterintuitive. Okay. And it's... And this is where we get dicey with some of the opinions about the military, because, the military is not looking for robots. However, there are times when if somebody tells you to do something, it can't be a question. It needs to be, a very quick and reactive thing. So that response to orders and things like that is something that's very, very important.
And you've done both sides of that.
Yes.
You've taken orders and you've led teams yourself.
Yes, and I think and that's, to me, what leadership is, and understanding that is very important. There's going to be times when you lead, and there's going to be times when you need to follow. And it doesn't matter who you are or what, and again, unless you're the President of the United States, who's the Commander-in-Chief, there's nobody else that you answer to. Everybody answers to somebody.
I guess that's, you have to be able to take those orders, but at the same time, still question, but not be a robot. I
absolutely, I think that there's a time and place for everything. There is, I've learned always to speak my mind. And I think that it's important to do that, but I think you also have to know when and where to do that. There is absolutely nothing wrong with holding people accountable, and accountability goes all ways. Above you, below you, next to you, your peers behind you. And I think it's very important in the military that you speak your mind, because you're dealing a lot of times with people's lives, and the things that you do in the military, depending on what your job, is very dangerous. So it's important that people understand and listen, but also understand that your voice needs to be heard, because your idea might be the one that changes things.
So challenges, obviously, it's if you're serving and you're overseas, there's always that risk of danger. But let's talk about transitioning. I guess if you decide you are not going to remain in the military forever or in service forever, and when you want to transition to civilian life, how challenging is that?
I think it can be very challenging. I think I think the longer you stay in the military, the more challenging it makes, because you get used to things being a certain way. Myself, I spent 28 years in the Marine Corps, so when I went to the civilian side, for me, if I'm told to be there at 9 o'clock, I'm going to be there at 9 o'clock. Whereas, 9 o'clock might just be a target. I don't understand that, so it's very hard for me to understand why somebody can come in at 9 o'clock and not come in at 9 o'clock and not get in trouble. So there's definitely a mind shift that you have to take when you're making that transition. I think, again, the advantage that we have now is that, if you take your time and you know that you're leaving the military, if you take the time to do research, learn how to write your resume, and do the right things before you leave, you'll be a lot more successful. I think too many times people get to the 18, 19 year, then they start thinking about what they're going to do, as opposed to 5 years, 10 years prior to retiring, so that they know how to turn that resume, that career, into a good resume.
So can you transition within the military, for example, and not be serving in the field, so to speak? In
the field you chose?
Well, no, I mean like serving overseas somewhere where you're, in the Middle East, for example. Is there the office job version of?
There is. I mean, even in combat environments, you still have administrators and people that have to get things someplace. So there's still I'm not going to say non-dangerous jobs, because if you're in combat environment, it's always a dangerous job, but it's just the risk factor is not as high as some other ones.
What skills or certifications can people earn when serving, is one of the questions we're getting.
So I think that the thing to keep in mind here is what you want to do as a career. Mm-hmm. If you're looking to get, a doctorate, if you're looking to be a lawyer, if you're looking to be any one of those careers where you need an education, you can get it through the military. You're not going to come out of the military with a certificate saying you're the, whatever. There's a lot of recognition through the military. There's a lot of awards. There's a lot of things that you will, if you do a good job, that'll definitely come your way. That, again, if you take the time to understand how to transfer those things from a military resume to a civilian resume, can be very beneficial to making your career look well. Mm-hmm. It really depends what you want to do. I mean, I know guys that have gone into the military, went in. I have a friend that went in as a combat engineer, decided he wanted to be a lawyer, was a lawyer in the Marine Corps for 15 years, got out and has his own practice now and doing very well. And, so he came out of there with a law degree and the experience of practicing law for 10 years. So, it's definitely, you're getting a lot more than a piece of paper, I think.
Can you give us a few more examples like that, so that students watching can understand that? I guess earlier on you said the military isn't some place where you just go and do an undergrad in something and try and figure it out. But mm-hmm. after a while, you can pivot.
Absolutely. I mean, oh my God, the examples are on the list. I mean, there's people I know a guy that went on. He's in the Navy. He went into he was a submariner, and he. And I don't know exactly what he did, but he worked on the nuclear engines in the submarine, and now he works in Jersey at the Pico plant down there, doing very, very well. So it's very easy. I mean, aircraft mechanics. I mean, guys that work on planes, guys that do different things like that, working for Boeing. the amount of people who leave the military and go into different companies like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and all these military industrial developers, it's staggering because the careers are out there. So the military is definitely a good way for you to get the experience. And if you're looking as an enlisted from a trade standpoint, you can easily spend 4 years in, become an aircraft mechanic, computer technician, whatever the case may be, leave and take a position someplace else.
We have another question from a student. If someone who's a mechanic or electrician in the Marines and a war starts, are they sent to battle like those in infantry?
It all depends. Depending on how long the war lasts, they might need electricity there. They might need housing. It all depends on what's going to happen in that particular area. Again, each branch is different. There's the chances of somebody who is in the Army, who is, and I'm just going to say he's a computer technician, he's just ending up in a combat environment are pretty slim, where he's going to be in a dangerous situation. The Marine Corps is a little bit smaller, so it's a little bit different. But again, unless you're picking a hazardous duty field, it's going to be a 9-to-5 job.
Is that, I guess, one of the myths that I was going to ask you if there's a myth that you'd like to debunk about service?
There's a lot of myths. There's a lot of myths. I just, not everybody is what we call like a door kicker and doing, the high-speed stuff. It takes a lot. The average infantry person on the ground, for that one person to be on the ground, it takes, I think the number is like 18 to 22 service additional personnel to keep that person on the ground. So there's a lot of people that come into play to support that person. And I think that people don't realize that. Because the jobs go from, like I said, anything from a pet handler to, a doctor. So it's very widespread.
What kind of support is there for, I guess, people returning from combat in terms of health and wellness?
The VA is the first line of defense for military personnel when they get out. Basically the VA is a benefit you earn. So the VA, you can basically go to VA for any hospital or doctor visit, and you're covered. I think that what we find a lot more is, like anything else. I mean, I think that, when you're dealing with stressful situations, whether it's military, a job, whatever the case may be, when you're around a community of people who have shared experiences and understand what you've gone through, I think it's a lot easier to move forward than if you feel like you're alone. So my suggestion is always to find, whether or not you believe in the VA or not, the VA is definitely a resource where you can meet people and definitely get a lot of help. There's a lot of great doctors and a lot of great people in there. The VA is getting a lot better about opening up other resources to organizations like myself with the Weekly Fight. There's a ton of organizations that are partnering with the VA now. So I think they're opening up more to a lot of the other services that are out there.
So I want to see if there are any more questions. If we enlist, how long do we have to stay in order to file for a parent's citizenship?
Ooh. So I don't want to give you any bad information on that. Your average enlistment is 4 to 8 years. And I think the path to citizenship is an 8-year commitment. But you can't quote me on that.
For yourself?
Correct.
But then what about your family? I guess that you do the
So
typical...
if you become a citizen and you're married, then obviously your wife and your children that are with you will be a citizen as well. Anybody else outside of that immediate family would not be.
Is there anything else you want to add, Marty, that we're missing? We covered a lot today, but I feel like there's just so much more that we could talk about.
We could. Again, I think that the biggest piece to this, to me, is really, like everything else, is really trying to figure out if this is the right career path for you. If you want a challenging career, the military is definitely it. If you want a rewarding career, the military is definitely it. But a lot of it too is depending on how you look at it. Mm-hmm. It's your perception of things a lot of times.
That was a very impressive list of all the different career options that are available to you.
And that's a small segment. I mean, there's not a job that's out in the world that you won't find in the military.
Okay. All right. So students, if there aren't any more questions, I'm going to wrap up here. So thank you, Sergeant Major Marty Kenny, for sharing your incredible journey and advice. And thank you to all our students for joining us and asking some really great questions. And before we wrap up, a few quick reminders. You'll earn 100 points for attending today's session. Give it a couple of days for the points to appear in your profile. We have more exciting live learning sessions coming up in a few weeks, January 30th and February 12th on your screen. Project management and app development, if that's something that interests you. And then on February 12th, entrepreneurship. We're going to hear from a recent college grad who started his own business. So if there's a specific career field you're curious about, let us know in the chat. We'd love to hear your ideas and tailor future events to your interests. We're also excited to collaborate with Arizona State University to bring you college-level courses for free. Our first session is getting underway now, and we have 2 courses coming up in March. You still have time to register, so visit ontrackplus.org and apply through your dashboard. Once again, thank you to Marty Kenny, to all the students who are here, and our staff at OnTrack Plus working behind the scenes to bring you this live event. Thank you very much, and see you next time.